Obviously, this is the first of many, many weeks of what we call in Bible college personal evangelism. Personal evangelism is a 3-hour credit that you get at almost any Bible college or seminary, and it's usually a freshman or sophomore level. And I know this because I've taken the classes and I've taught the classes in school and seminary. And I know that by the end of these next 14 weeks or whatever we're going to do, you will have the equivalent of a 3-hour credit. Not that you're going to get it, but you will have the equivalent of what I got, what we all got when we were in Bible college on the subject of personal evangelism. And you're going to be able, as I'll demonstrate in a moment, to use everything you get. Now, like one session will probably be on tracks, how to use them, when to use them, how valuable they are. You'll be learning about how to witness to friends, how to witness to family, strangers. What if you have objections? I think one of the biggest questions I get when I taught Sunday school was, I have this atheist friend. What do I say? How do I say it? So we're going to cover all of that in detail, in macro and in micro. So I hope you're here every week. We are going to record it, but I don't want you to rely on that. I want you to come and use your notes. Everybody has a little brown notebook, and we're hoping that you put all of the notes from these 14 weeks in that little notebook so that you have that, not separate from everything else, distinct from everything else, and you can use it in the years to come. I still use a little red notebook thing that I got when I was 14 years old. And it's in my file, and I'll go back to it every now and then, and still those are the verses that I know the most. I just wrote a couple letters up here. They stand for this. Knowledge equals what? Does anybody know? Confidence. Knowledge equals confidence. Now, I'm going to illustrate it. I'm just going to spend about 8 or 9 minutes here and then turn it over to Andy. And by illustrating this, I hope that through the weeks ahead, you'll recognize that what we're trying to do is give you confidence. But we're not trying to give you confidence by pumping you up, by saying, you can do it, like a halftime speech. We're trying to give you confidence because you're going to have knowledge. The more you know something, the more familiar you are with that something, the more confident you are in that something. Now, how do you get knowledge? This is the first thing. When you study, you research, you ask, you watch people, you observe, you listen, you read. That's how you get knowledge. You also get it by experience. That's going to be later. That's going to be the rest of your life. I still get nervous when I approach someone about the gospel. Nothing compared to when I was 14 and 15 and 13. And there's a reason for that. And I'm going to illustrate it with golf real quick. Golf is a weird game. You know, golf was invented in Scotland. Scotland has an ocean, and next to the ocean, there's the beach, and over here, there's the farmland that they utilized a lot. And then in between the farmland and the ocean, there was something that was called links land. Links land was waste. They couldn't use it. You couldn't farm it. So what they would do is take the sheep down there to let them graze, okay? And that was a long, laborious day for shepherds. They got bored. And because they got bored, they would take their staffs, they would find little rocks, and they would hit them, and they would have a contest. They'd put a little hole up here where the rabbits had patted down certain areas of grass. Today, those are the greens. And they would put a hole in it, and they would just smack it, and they would keep score. And on these link lands, these sheep would come, and they would find the little dunes, sand dunes, and they would, because it's windy and cold in Scotland, and they would burrow. And because they would burrow in these dunes constantly, it would wear the grass away, and it would make these sandy areas. And those became bunkers. So they had rules. They said, well, if you hit it in this little sandy area, you have to hit it out. So that you try to avoid those traps. Today we call them bunkers or sand traps. That's where all of this came from. Now, knowledge equals confidence. This is a 9 item, okay? A 9 item. In 1932, this is all that a man by the name of Gene Sarazen, who was a great, great golfer, that's all he had in his toolbox to hit the ball out of a sand trap or a bunker. And it's hard. It takes a lot of skill to take this little thing here and hit a ball with accuracy out of a sand trap. And of course, there are fairway bunkers, there's greenside bunkers, they're all over the fairway. One day, he was getting flying lessons from Howard Hughes, the billionaire, richest man in the world, but a great pilot and a great designer of aircraft. And so Gene Sarazen, famous golfer, was getting personal flying lessons from Howard Hughes. And during the flying lessons, Howard Hughes explained to him the tail rudder and why if you move the tail rudder down, it would give it lift and so forth. And on that flying lesson, he had an idea. So in 1932, he's at the British Open. He sneaks his 9-iron into his hotel. And what he does in the hotel is he takes a soldering iron with lead, and he just puts lead and lead and lead and more lead and more lead, because he remembered this flange on this tail rudder on this airplane, and it gave him this idea. And he turned his 9-iron into this. See how fat that is on the end? This is called a sand wedge, okay? So he sneaked it onto the golf course, and because he knew that if they saw it before he did it, they would say that's illegal. The RNA hasn't approved it, so he said, if I can just start playing with it, I'll finish it with it. And sure enough, the British were in awe of this sandwich. Now I have a question. Elizabeth, I need you to come up here and show me, explain to everybody here how to use a sandwich. Can you do that? She just turned as red. Sure. She can't do that. And the idea, now she already doesn't like to get in front of crowds and teach and preach and shout and scream and be the center of attention. But the idea that she had, what if all of our lives depended on her coming up here? Our eternity depended on her coming up here. Come on, Elizabeth, come up here. What does it mean, 56? Do you know? Can you come up here and explain to all of us, please, our lives depend on you. Now, she would be a nervous wreck coming up here, right? Because there's no knowledge. Without the knowledge, there's no confidence. All right, Riley, take this. Just start telling us how to use it, what the degree means, just whatever you want. Say anything you want.
So there are two numbers. The first is the 56, and that means degrees of loft, meaning like when you set it on the ground, the angle that the face sits at, and the more loft you have, the easier it is to get the ball higher in the air. So for a shot out of a bunker, you want to have the highest loft of all the clubs in the bag, and that's what the sandwich usually is. And then the 14 number is something called bounce, which is how much the indicator of how much the club is going to dig into the ground when you make contact. And usually higher bounce means that it's going to do less of that. So a shot out of the bunker, where you need to hit down at a very steep angle behind the ball in order to get lift, you want something with a lot higher.
All right, I've heard enough. How about you guys?
I have to live with this.
I have to live with this. I promise you, if we had the time, he would come up here and he would show you how to open your stance and open the club face, and could spend an hour. Now, I didn't tell him what to say. I just said, here, take this wedge and explain something. And he didn't have any problem doing it. And the reason he didn't have any problem doing it is because he had the knowledge. Knowledge is confidence. By the end of these 14 weeks, our hope is that you have so much knowledge that your confidence begins to grow. Now, the confidence won't disappear. It won't go away. If I'm in a tournament and I have a sand wedge, I know what Riley's talking about. And yet, Riley, if you have a downhill lie in a bunker and no green to work with, and there's water on the other side, and it's on 18 and you're leading by 1, you're going to be nervous. I'm going to be nervous. And so therefore the knowledge is all there, but still there's always that wondering, am I going to say the right thing to this person? Am I going to mess it up? But this is the miracle of soul winning. The miracle of soul winning is that, okay, you have it, and you have all that knowledge, but another set of hands comes on top of yours and takes care of all of your mistakes and your lack. And I'm going to talk about that next time.